Danny, Simon, Newcastle, bottom of the Champions League group with 4 points from their opening 4 games. After returning to the Champions League to much fanfare, as I said in the intro, are they about to go out with a damp squib? This was Eddie Howe post-match.
The frustration on our performance, knowing that there's more in the tank for us to give. We're better than that. We can show a better version of ourselves than we did. So a frustration that I don't think Dortmund have seen the best Newcastle. And that always leaves, when you're in my shoes, a feeling of frustration. But we have to accept it. We've delivered it. Yeah, we can only look to the future now.
Have Newcastle been good enough in this tournament so far, Danny? Have they shown enough?
I actually think he's been a little bit overcritical. The first half wasn't as good as we've seen Newcastle be, but it was a new system. Well, not new system, but new personnel in that system. Second half, I thought they had a right good goal. Should have got back in. I thought the home game, they went toe-for-toe with Dortmund, hit the crossbar a couple of times, could have got something out of it. They've beaten PSG, only got a credible draw in Milan. They are way ahead of schedule. He's done a remarkable job, Eddie Howe, and actually, they've been so unlucky getting in this group.
Well, if they're way ahead of schedule, how would you view a Champions League group exit?
As long as they get in Europa League and finish third, they'd have a great chance going on to win that. I wouldn't see it as a catastrophe. They've been unlucky with this group. They've got horrendous injuries. They've been in every game. I would just put it as down to a learning curve and just make sure
a learning curve.
Yeah, because
you see, when we had club director Jamie Rubin on, he said this ain't no learning curve. We're in this for real, because don't think of it as a free hit. Have a listen.
Definitely no free hits. We're here to compete. We believe we can go very far in this competition. The self-belief the team have, the coach have, the players have, and the ownership have means that we always want to progress, and we always want to show the quality we have on the pitch. And I'm sure we're going to give a great account of ourselves throughout the rest of the competition. It's a tough group. Let's be clear about that. But, we welcome the competition and we say bring it on.
So bring it on. I mean, Simon, he wasn't exactly saying we're in it to win it, but not far off.
Maybe. I mean, obviously, when you put a question to somebody about a free hit, they're going to respond in a way, because ultimately they're in a competition to try and advance the best way they can. I mean, I'm not entirely sure you take at face value what Jamie Rubin has to say about it all.
It was a free hit.
Predominantly about property in Newcastle, that deal. But the bottom line is that Newcastle, I mean, there's no prosthetic for an amputated Geordie spirit, is there? As I snigger behind my hands a little bit. But they play Dortmund, and Dortmund are an experienced European side. They've not been beaten at home for 27 games besides a 4-0 thumping on the weekend by Bayern Munich, which means there was going to be a bounce back effect. So I really don't think you can look at Newcastle in this round and say,
they went toe for toe.
I thought they were bloody unlucky in the first game.
They were.
They were very unlucky in the first game. And in this game, okay, they've come up against a formidable, very experienced campaigner in Borussia Dortmund. To have come out of this group so far with beating PSG, I mean, PSG were rubbish, to be fair, but they really did put them to the sword, to get a credible result against Milan. And it's ironic because Rob Lee was talking about 2 weeks ago about how well they'd done in the campaign when he was there 20 years ago. And he said, and the thing for us was we slipped up with PSV. We thought that the PSV was after the Lord Mayor's show, and those were the games that undid us. So in this group, you're looking at Milan, you're looking at PSG. You might think Dortmund are slightly the run to the lit if you're Newcastle. And here we are with no points out of 2 games against.
Yeah, let's give it some reality. Only 4 of that starting 11 had played Champions League football before.
Well, you've got to do it sometime.
No, I know, Jim. We're talking about the reality of Champions League. When you've only got 4 players in your starting 11 who've played Champions League football before arriving this season with Newcastle, that they're on a learning curve. They're going to be better for it. They're playing 3 great, really solid, good sides in their group. And actually, let's not forget something else. They're not out.
They're not out.
They get 4 points.
I'm not sure they'll be happy with learning curve, though. I mean, once you're in it, make your mark.
It's not whether they're happy with it. That's the reality.
They've got to be AC Milan, because I think they'll find themselves in a different experience with PSG the next time round. So they've got to be AC Milan, and even that puts them in a slightly invidious position.
If they win both, to go through.
But I don't think they will. But I think as far as Newcastle are concerned, to get to the Champions League was ahead of schedule. To perform in the way that they've performed in all the games, because they've been in all the games, and they can consider themselves potentially unlucky not to have taken at least 1 point out of the 2 games against Borussia Dortmund. So with that in mind, I think you look at Newcastle's campaign and say, this is an extension of their development. They've gone from a side that Eddie picked up with a club that was in disarray, or it was dysfunctional because they loathed the owner, to a club that's in forward movement, to a club that avoided relegation at a canter in the first season, that got in the Champions League, that are punching this season their weight, and are punching their weight in the Champions League. So I think everything about Newcastle right now, with all due respect, besides some challenges off the field with players getting banned for stupid behaviour or addictive behaviour,
or
whatever
injuries
it is,
even.
or injuries, I think there's a lot more than just simply writing Newcastle off as saying, oh, well, they found their level.
Well, they've got more chance. The reality is, if they drop into Europa League, they've got more chance of winning that than the Champions League anyway.
Yeah, but that's not the way you want to go.
No,
When
I'm
you
saying
get into the Champions
saying
League.
as a softener. You know, this isn't a Newcastle squad that's expecting to win the Champions League, irrelevant of what that fella just said who was on, because they're not with the elite yet. I mean, the other thing as well, just to add, you're not just talking about a group of players who are new to this, you know, playing midweek, weekend.
you're talking to management
Eddie
team.
Howe's never done it.
Yeah.
So this squad's evolving really quickly and nicely. It'll get everyone back fit again. The biggest thing for Newcastle, making sure they're in it again next season.
Well, that's it. But when they were at the draw, Simon, earlier on, and the draw is made and out comes Milan, Dortmund and PSG,
group of death.
they're like, wow, wonderful. They're not thinking, if we don't make it in there,
No.
we've always got the Europa League. Of course
No,
they're not.
of course
but yet
not.
today we are. And we're expected to believe that.
Of course not, but
and accept that.
There's two ways that you run your football club. There's through the eye and the prism of the media, or through the reality of what you actually price into your own thinking.
You are the media.
First and foremost. No, I'm saying through the eye of the media.
Yeah.
And being in the media and having owned a football club, I can speak to both. Not Champions League level, of course, but notwithstanding it, you focus these things in your mind.
Yeah.
Newcastle would have looked at this and gone, we've got 35 million quid or whatever it is, additional revenue, which means that we can push the barriers in terms of financial fair play. We're in a competition. They won't be worried if they go out. They won't want to go out.
No.
But they won't be wringing their handkerchiefs if they do. The fans will be disappointed, but what an experience, what an atmosphere that club is currently producing on the field and in the stadium.
Not many teams go to Dortmund and get something.
Well, Newcastle are bottom nonetheless of the Champions League group with 4 points from their opening 4 games. Is perspective needed here? Danny says it's a learning curve. Is he right? Was this always going to be the reality first time around for Newcastle? You guys, girls out there who support Newcastle might want to jump on the phone. It's down to you. 03717 223344 81089.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.